Well, good afternoon and welcome to Round the Table with Christian Concern. It's great to be talking today about a school mum who is challenging her school over some LGBT indoctrination. So I'm delighted to welcome today Izzy Montague, who has a case coming up in the courts next week. Hi, Izzy. Nice to see you.
Hello.
And we've also got Steve Bigu, who is our head of education at Christian Concern. Hi, Steve.
Good to see you.
Thanks for joining us. Izzy, tell us what happened to you. You had a child in a primary school, and tell us what was the first thing that you sort of got concerned about?
It was the social aspect of what they were trying to teach my child in terms of lifestyle.
Right.
It was Pride Month in 2018. They decided that they wanted to celebrate Pride, gay Pride. And I only knew that this is what they were doing very late on in the month, the end of the month, where they wanted to end what they had been doing in the classroom with the parade. And yeah, that was
How old was your child at that point?
He was 4 years old.
4 years old?
Yeah.
Right.
And he was in reception.
In reception. Wow. And the school were doing a pride parade in the playground, is that right?
That was correct, yeah. So it was going to be celebrated and watched by parents and the local MP at the time.
Right.
And am I right in saying that it was going to be, they were trying to include all sorts of things in this celebration as well? They were it was a gay pride one, but and we'll also add in a whole variety of other things. Is that right, Izzy?
That's correct. So it was really confusing because why else would you have a problem with it? My son came home that month with a cloud saying, "I am proud of," and in that cloud he could write just certain things that he was proud of. I think he had put in the cloud, "I'm proud that I can write. I'm proud that I'm African." So it was really, I wasn't sure. I didn't even know about Pride Month, to be honest. So I just thought that it was normal, quite, it wasn't something that struck me as anything unusual until I actually went onto the school website to actually see that they did say that this was Gay Pride Month, and that they spoke about Stonewall and the riots, and said that Stonewall opened the door for many people to be who they are today, including Black people and women.
Stonewall. They claimed that Stonewall did that, did they?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so what did you do? How did you react when you sort of had concerns about your 4-year-old being indoctrinated with LGBT stuff?
I was completely at a loss because I couldn't believe that the school was doing such a thing. I tried to approach the head teacher, but it was just a closed door. She wasn't wanting to, have, she had already put her defense up that anybody who had a problem with this was homophobic, basically. But why else would you have a problem with this? This is a good thing. They're being inclusive. They're trying to include different types of families. What is the problem? And my issue is I'm Christian. We don't celebrate Pride at all. So it was a bit confusing for me why a head teacher just wouldn't listen. But it wasn't just the head teacher, it was the school involvement, that they just wasn't having it. They had been basically told that any parent that had putting up a fight against it was a problem. So I was a problem. And I just didn't know where to turn to because it felt that everybody was quite scared, for their children as well. Because if you did say anything,
did you talk to other parents as well, Izzy?
Yes, I did. Because at first, sometimes it went. I felt that after the Pride event itself, I felt that it was very much a case where maybe this was going to be the end of it. It was the end of Pride Month, so I didn't think that there was going to be any much more of this until I did speak to other parents who said to me, "Sorry, but your child is only in reception. Our child is in further years and they're reading books. Next year, your child will be reading books about penguins and also, so sorry, this isn't it for you.
And so you wanted your child to be excused from these kind of activities. Is that what you said to the school?
Yes. So I approached the school.
Your camera's just gone slightly the wrong way around. Steve, tell us, what do you think about this school's policy and the way it's handled this?
Yeah, well, sadly, it's becoming an increasing issue, an increasing problem. And Izzy, I just say a word about Izzy. I mean, she's been extremely brave, actually, in stepping forward and saying, look, I'm not happy about this for my child. She could have capitulated and just said, okay, well, fine. And we understand that she was put under quite a lot of pressure. And we've been able, as Christian Concern, to really help her and support her. And it's not only Izzy that we've needed to support, because over the last month, the previous month was June, which is Pride Month, we've had a huge number of parents and teachers contacting us and saying what's been going on in their schools, often under the guise of relationship and sex education. These things have been coming more and more into schools. By no means all schools, but a significant proportion of schools. And there's been this increasing wave of people saying to us, I don't understand, why are they making my child get involved in these kinds of diversity marches, diversity celebrations that are really strongly, heavily weighted towards pride. They're entitled pride, they're with the rainbow flags. They seem to have been strongly influenced, again, by Stonewall. Stonewall's already been referenced by Izzy. And sadly, so many schools have been sent so much information, free resources from lots of these organizations that have a progressive agenda, as they would call it, progressive. I put that progressive in inverted commas. And schools have been duped by that and are now delivering education and encouraging celebrations of these kinds up and down the country. One of the big issues was that a lot of schools became Stonewall champion schools. And so if they were to do a whole range of stuff on this, then they would get the gold standard of being a Stonewall champion school. And not just Stonewall, but organizations like Educate and Celebrate. If you've been looking at what the cases that we've been involved in, the case of Bernard Randall, that was something that he was disagreeing with in the school where he was chaplain. That's in an independent school. So it's not just state schools, well, it's independent schools as well that have got this flow of resources and progressive ideology around LGBTQ thinking.
So, and I understand Izzy's got some technical issues now. We hope to get her back before very long. But in the meantime, Steve, so what's your advice to parents when they find this kind of thing? I mean, a 4-year-old sounds extreme, doesn't it, really? But when they find that the school, if they find their school, let's say a primary school, is pushing LGBT ideology onto very young children, what's your advice on what parents should do about that?
Well, we have lots of practical advice to give on this. We're often giving individual support, and there's lots of resources again on our website. Just want to signpost that for anyone that's watching and tuning into this. I think the first thing I would say is we have a wonderful Lord and Savior who loves our children, and he will help us. He will guide us, because often handling these things are incredibly difficult and challenging for us. Many people have become fearful of speaking up, and yet the Lord wants to strengthen us and embolden us, because the children that we have are the children that he has given to us. We often call them our children. Well, they're his children, and we've been given the opportunity to steward them over a number of years, and he will empower us and strengthen us and help us so that we can train them and guide them in the ways that he wants them to be trained and guided. So I encourage people into their relationship with God around all of this to pray and say, Lord, what do you want me to be doing? What do you want me to be saying? And how do you want me to be saying it so my children are protected from harmful ideologies? And so as you pray, as you talk to the Lord about this, we can give you great advice as to how to practically handle that. One of the things that you must understand is head teachers don't have to do this, especially in primary schools. The story of Izzy is in a primary school. No sex education needs to be delivered in primary school. There's nothing mandatory on that front, only relationships education. And that doesn't have to include a diversity celebration of this kind. the head teachers have an awful lot of leeway in what they decide happens inside their school. So I would encourage every and any parent who's got any issues around this, any questions around this, to talk to their head teacher, to request, even demand from their head teacher that they pass on the kind of curriculum, they communicate about the curriculum that is going to be delivered to their children of anything to do with sex, anything to do with sexuality, so that they're completely in the know as to what their children are going to be taught. Now, of course, this was required of the RSE that was going to be delivered in primary and secondary schools that finally came in this year. It was required that schools did this kind of consultation, but we've been hearing that many schools haven't done that. So I would advise that you do get involved with sending an email to your head teacher, phoning them up. You can do it all in a very good tone. And
it's a legal requirement, is it, Steve, that they consult with parents about this kind of education? Is that right?
It's required for them to fully consult about anything to do with relationships and sex education. They're required to show you the policy. They were required to consult about the content, and some have done this better than others. Some schools have got into really good discussions with parents, and Christian parents have had the opportunity to raise their concerns and help head teachers realise that if they were to be enforcing some of these things, that they would be in contravention of their rights as a parent to bring their children up in line with their religious convictions. And parents who raise their voice and have got on governing bodies to do that kind of thing have been able to shape the kind of education that's being given to children across their schools. So that can be done if you get involved and you make sure that you do raise your voice. Yes, now, absolutely.
Listen, if you've got questions about this, and Steve is really the expert here, do put them in the chat, on whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. I've spotted one here from Habib Steele, is it? Now, she says, or is it he? Sorry. The Welsh Government is a member of Stonewall Diversity Champions. This seems to commit us as a nation to the T ideology. What can we do about it? Now, Steve, I know that you've just today submitted consultation response, haven't you, to the Welsh Government consultation on RSE teaching. Tell us about that.
So, yes, what can be done in answer to that question? Well, right at this very moment, you've got an opportunity to put in your thoughts about the RSE code in Wales. So this code, this relationship sex education code, is what will be used once it's been finalised to inform what education is going to be delivered in schools, what curriculum is written for being provided in Welsh schools. And so you've got an opportunity to comment on that, to read it, look at the documentation, look it up on the Welsh Government website, and contribute to that. So we have done that. There are a number of really concerning
maybe my colleagues can post the link up to Steve's great article about how to respond to that.
There are a number of dismaying things that we're seeing in that. It's clearly been strongly influenced by groups like Stonewall, and in Wales there's a group called Agenda as well, which is again very disturbing when you see the amount of influence it seems that they've had. So this is an opportunity for Christians to say, no, this is not right. And again, that article hopefully will appear. Do look it up on our Christian Concern website. That will help explain the kind of things that you could comment on that consultation to the Welsh Government. If I just name one thing that is really key, that is constantly being missed out, is there's a consistent consent-based approach to all sex education that's being delivered. This is how you give consent for sexual activity. And this is being given to children for whom the Lord deems it illegal for children to be engaging in sexual activity. And yet, where does that appear in any of the sex and the relationship and sexuality education, as it's called in Wales? Where does that appear? Nowhere does that appear. And that alone is a travesty. And we're talking about safety of children all the time in these kinds of documents. How is it safe to not be explaining to children about something which is illegal and clearly harmful? Certainly from a Christian perspective, it is immoral. And these things need to be commented on and pushed back on. Another thing, if we just say this as well about the Welsh Code as it is, it talks about gender and sexual orientation as being things that might change, but it also includes the word sex as something that might change over time as well. So really, you understand sex as being male or female because of your chromosomes. You're male, you can produce sperm. You're female, you can menstruate. Sorry for the science lesson, but these are immutable things. Sex does not change over time, and yet it's being classed in a group of things, saying that these things develop and change over time, which is totally this is the contrary from what's being taught, what should be being taught clearly in the science curriculum about chromosomes and male and female. And so these things need to be pushed back on in the consultation. There's an opportunity to do that at this very time. Very good. Well, I gather we've got Izzy back. Hi, Izzy.
Yeah, Izzy, welcome back. Well done getting back. Sorry we lost you there. Izzy, I'm interested to know, so tell us more about how the school responded when you tried to get a meeting with the head teacher. Oh, we haven't lost her again, have we? Oh dear. I think we might have lost her again. Oh well.
I know an answer to that, Tim.
Yes.
I know from that she ended up in a meeting with the head teacher where I don't know if we can get it up on screen as well with the technical difficulties we've got, but a T-shirt. Yes, I think it's going to appear. One of the staff members, the senior staff members, in the meeting where a parent was coming in and talking about these issues, was wearing this T-shirt or very similar to this T-shirt. Isn't that right, Izzy?
Yes. So in the meeting, the head teacher's daughter, she was wearing the T-shirt. I have to admit, I had not seen the daughter before the meeting. I think I'd probably seen her once before. So I cannot say whether or not this is a normal thing that she would have worn. That's what I was told when I complained about it, that she had often worn this T-shirt. But it felt very fitting for this meeting that she was having with us, that this T-shirt was something that she wanted for us to express to ourselves, because we were told verbally at the beginning of the meeting the same thing, basically. And then she was wearing the T-shirt to remind us kindly.
What were you told? What were you told, Izzy, in the meeting then?
So, like I said at the beginning, we were told that we couldn't be transphobic, we couldn't be homophobic, or the meeting would be terminated.
Wow.
But yeah, so that was the route. So if you start the meeting off with that, clearly you feel that there's something that I'm going to say that will be homophobic. And the complaint prior to that had just been a case that I had said that I didn't want my child to be part of the Pride Parade due to the fact that we were Christian, we don't agree with celebrating Pride. And that was something that was told at the beginning of the meeting, though nothing about nothing that my definition of homophobia is very different, but she clearly felt that just by claiming that I was Christian, that she needed to warn me that I was, in breach of being homophobic or transphobic.
Yeah. So, and how did the meeting end then, Izzy? Or, I think, what was the conclusion? They refused to let your child be taken out of the lessons, did they?
Yes, so throughout the meeting, there was a disagreement of there was a clear disagreement of homosexuality. I got that they were very much in agreement that homosexuality should be taught to children, books.
Even to 4-year-olds. Let's remember, it's a 4-year-old, yeah?
Yeah, 2 4-year-olds. So at this meeting, things had developed since I had wrote my complaint. So there had been posters up around the school. The pride flags that had been put up around the school for that month of June had not been taken down. She had kept them up around the school. I got the feeling that she did it because she felt that this was important, that parents cannot push their agendas into the school, and she had to make a point that these flags and the message had to remain. So she went one step further and had posters at every angle in the school saying mum and dad, mum and mom's girlfriend, mum and dad's boyfriend, equals love. And these posters were printed colourfully with Stonewall at the bottom of them. And like I said, there was about 3 of them. The children can't miss it. So it was very much something that she wanted to zone in on the children. And that was brought up in the meeting. I asked, why were these posters put up? Why Stonewall? and the head teacher told me that she had got consultations from Stonewall, I did ask, do you get any other, anybody else helping you to educate children? Anybody from like a Christian, a pastor, reverend? She said no. So I said, so Stonewall is operating in the school. And she said, well, she gets guidance from them. And the meeting was very much that, that they're in agreement with LGBT and that we just have to jump on board.
Now, it's worth just flagging up the government produced some new guidance, Tim, in September that was actually really helpful, because it said, because these kinds of issues had started to come up more and more, they said that all schools should have, the phrase was, use extreme caution with using any external organisations, because they've been picking up on this kind of issue, particularly around the transgender and gender identity ideology, also coming in through organisations like Stonewall. So they've been really trying to also advise schools to use extreme caution with any organisations. And I think any parent should be also really vigilant about any external organisations that are bringing influence to their schools, as you found, because they were having a very significant difference at the school where you were. And
it's interesting as well, because just recently Stonewall's sort of fallen from grace a bit, or fallen from favour. I mean, a number of companies and government agencies even have pulled out of the Stonewall Champion scheme because Stonewall is promoting transgenderism too much and is gone too far and become like extreme effectively. And even former founders of Stonewall have criticised where Stonewall's going to and things. And yet your school was like, we're Stonewall, and Stonewall has got the answers. It looks a bit embarrassing now for the school, I suspect. But tell us, Izzy, so, this obviously was a very unusual case because, it was unable to be resolved. The school was intransigent. And in the end, it's going to a legal case, isn't it? Next week, you'll be in court, starting on Wednesday, I think. Tell us about that. What's the case around there?
So, I mean, after the meetings, we had another meeting with the governing body, and we just couldn't settle anything. The school just could fail to see that they did anything wrong. They said that, what's our problem? Pride is celebrated by a number of organisations, and they listed, at the final closing statement for the full complaint was basically, everybody celebrates Pride. What is your problem? They could have handled things a bit better communication-wise, but other than that, they didn't do anything wrong. So after that, obviously, the only way to go was to seek, legal advice and to go down the legal route with them. And the point of this was, it's not just for my child, but it's for any other child that is faced with this. No matter what happens, the school was wrong in order to enforce their views, their social views onto any child, especially the disregard that they showed Christian children at the school. It is known that some children were exempt for their religious grounds, but just not if you're Christian.
And Izzy, you've taken your children out of that school now, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. We'll be praying for your case next week. It's a very important, significant case. But Steve, schools normally will allow you to take your kids out of lessons you don't agree with, won't they? I mean, that's normally what happens, isn't it?
Schools should always recognise that they are ancillary to the parents, in that they're providing a service to the parents in educating children. They're serving the state, yes, but they're really serving the parents. And so any parents listening to this, you need to get involved with the education. Let your teachers know that you're interested, that you want to be involved, and you do have clear rights to take your children out of certain sorts of lessons. Anything that can be deemed sex education, you can opt your children out from those up to the age of 16. And so, of course, what is happening in schools at the moment is there's a blurring of the lines as to what is or isn't considered as sex education. Whereas I think any parent could argue, if something to do with sexuality was being talked about, to do with the relationships between people that are defined because of sexual practices, this could be considered a form of sexual education that's going on. And you have a right to remove your children from any sex education. Always a difficult area. If you can get into good conversation with your school, make sure you've got good lines of communication wherever possible, really seek to do that. That's clearly become impossible for Izzy with the way in which the school were handling things. Thankfully, many schools, many head teachers, they're good people trying to do a job of serving parents, and it's a very difficult and challenging job, even more so over these last few months with the challenges of COVID. So get involved with what your children are. Know what's going on in your school. Get involved in parents' evenings. Go to become a governor. Thoroughly get involved.
Like you say, Steve, as well, telling them as well that they don't have to teach this kind of stuff, and it's not a legal requirement, and all of this kind of stuff. And you've got a few success stories, haven't you, of getting schools to change the way they do this? Yes,
and particularly sometimes it needs our legal team to kind of write some quite blunt letters to the school to say, do you know what? You're actually breaking the rights of parents here, and you're risking yourselves being taken to court. But not even going that far, actually just activating the complaints policy has provided fruit in this, where head teachers have then really thought things through, wrestled questions out, and adjusted and changed the policy of what they've been delivering in schools. So yes, we've got some success stories, and you can't always publicize these things and wave flags from the turrets of your castle on this kind of front, but we've definitely been seeing some success stories on that front, which is great.
And Steve, I can see some people have put up on their homeschooling is the way to go kind of thing. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, very, very happy to. I think some parents have become so distressed with what the state provision is that they're having to make some pretty radical decisions. Some are taking them out of schools, as Izzy had to do, and move them to another school where they've just not got a hearing, and they can't be sure their children will be kept safe from sexualizing ideology. Others have got involved in independent schools and found a way to get involved in independent Christian schools. I know of many really good quality independent Christian schools that will really strengthen and support parents with the passing on of their Christian faith. And some parents have made the radical and bold decision to home educate their children, which again is a very high calling, but is certainly a way that you can ensure that the faith that you're wanting to pass on to your children is being passed on through all aspects of life. And so it's important to really pray and say, Lord, what do you want me to be doing with these precious children that you've given to me? Homeschooling, as somebody you say has commented there, is definitely one of those answers that may well come. Also, do look around. There are many really good independent Christian schools.
How do people find Christian schools if they're interested in a Christian school, sending their kids to a Christian school, Steve?
You can go on to, there's a website called Christian Schools UK. The Christian Schools Trust have a website where there's 20 schools up and down the country. ACE schools, CEE Europe, there has a whole bunch of schools that you can see there. There are many places to look. Just get onto Google, start searching for Christian schools, and you'll definitely be able to find one that's up your street. If there isn't one, I'm currently working with my work with Christian Concern with 12 different groups up and down the country, from Aberdeen to Devon, who have parents and church leaders have realised what's going on is really disturbing, and we need to do something different, and we need to start our own independent Christian school. And there's many faithful people praying that through, working out how they might do that. Some good friends of ours of Christian Concern in Dudley are starting theirs in September. King Alfred School, Dudley. Do have a look up that if you're in the Dudley area. And so there is real hope for Christians. There are things going on. There feels like there's a wave of enthusiasm for actually understanding that we need to pass our faith on to our children, and the society and the state around us isn't necessarily helping us. And how do we get involved? How do we connect in with the schools that we do have? How do we start new independent Christian schools? How do we home educate in a way that will be able to really ensure that our children have had the faith that we want them to grab a hold of and be excited about in Jesus Christ, so that they're followers of Jesus Christ themselves?
I can see that Rachel Hocking on Facebook says there's also online Christian schools available. And of course, with people having had lockdown, that's possibly another issue, or a kind of way of doing homeschooling with help, isn't it, I suppose?
Definitely, yes. And one of the new opportunities that's with online schools involved in that is happening in Devon. Do have a look up South Devon Christian School as well. They're involved in some of those things.
Great. So Izzy, look, your case is listed for Wednesday, I think, next week, and it's going to last for a whole week, isn't it, in court?
Yeah.
You'll be on the witness stand and cross-examined, I expect, and so on. So, we'll be praying for you and supporting you. Thank you so much for standing up for your children, but not just your children, you know, every child really around this. And this legal case, we hope, will set a strong precedent that will help many other parents and children going forward in this whole area. And we pray that God gives you boldness and courage to speak the truth and to speak unashamedly about our beliefs as Christians. Thank you so much for your stance on this. We really appreciate it. And sorry you had some tech issues connecting with us today. So listen, thank you for joining us today on Round the Table. It's been great to discuss these issues. Look forward to seeing you again next week. And yeah, pray for Izzy and her case as it starts next week as well.
Thank you.